One day when the country is no longer facing an economic crisis, or one day when the country is free of corruption, when we are ready to talk, when you are ready to sit down and talk about real-time issues that we are facing, we'll be able to sit down and talk about the amount of racism that most Indian people have towards black people. This might not be a popular opinion, but I know whoever's watching this video knows what I'm talking about. This thing has been going on for the longest time and people are not addressing it. Instead, we sweep it under the carpet. But it's been going on for the longest time.
Hello guys, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Trending Pulse Worldwide. So today we are talking about something that rarely makes the headlines. How black people, including Africans living in India, experience racism. Not only in India, even in other places. You know, people don't like to talk about it, but racism against black people exists in many places and India is no exception. And you find that Africans, black tourists, and even black Indians have spoken up about the discrimination they face, from being harassed in the streets to being denied housing. But what is fueling this anti-blackness and why is it so deeply ingrained in Indian culture? Let's break it all down.
I'm talking about a lot of things. It's been happening for the longest time. How many times have you met one of your brother or sister or auntie or even your neighbor who works for Indians or who works in Makishini? Or my Indians, how many times have you heard them talk about how evil they are? How badly they treat black people? How much they see us as slaves or animals instead of human beings? This thing hasn't been addressed in South Africa for the longest time. People don't want to talk about it. I don't know, maybe it's because of the affiliation that the government has, or the former government, as they said, has with certain Indian businessmen and business people. But we need to start addressing this situation. I'm talking about a lot of things.
I wasn't going to stitch this video because I've made many videos talking about racism in our community. But I've seen a lot of stitches on this video and Indian people saying, well, it's not all Indian people. Yeah, we know that, black people know that, but it's a lot of us. So they are valid to say Indian people are racist. And can you honestly tell me, how would your family react if they know you're dating a black person? I also saw someone say, well, black people are racist to us too. Two wrongs don't make a right, but I'm also having a hard time believing that you know that many black people. And you're probably just making this assumption from like two black people that were nice to you. So like, well, they're racist to us too. We as Indian people need to acknowledge how we are wrong and apologize and change. We literally have come through apartheid together and somehow we're still divided. It doesn't make sense.
Indians in Africa, and especially in Kenya, we all know your ancestors were brought into these lands to come and build the railway line by the British. After the British left, you guys stayed to be part of us, which was only fair because you guys deserve to be here. But please, help me beg the older generation of Indians in Kenya to stop being racist towards the Kenyan people, towards the black. Pay black people the same wages you pay your own kind for the same services offered.
Have you worked for an Indian businessman in Africa? Have you worked for a hotel, a forex bureau, a restaurant, a supermarket? You know what I'm talking about. I mean, I've never, ever met a mean boss as an Indian boss in Africa. Some of these people are so mean.
Through a phase where I never dated anyone because I had that in me that I'm black, I'm not beautiful, no one will date me. So the first time I even dated someone, I was at the age of 28. So you can imagine. Yeah. My mom is Indian. My dad was a Nigerian. And growing up, I always had very low self-esteem, especially because of my skin color. Sometimes I tell them, like, no, I'm born and brought up here. Like, I'm from Mumbai. And they're like, no, your hair, no, it's not possible. Most men would not want to be seen with me. The guy I was dating, his mother actually told him, you can't marry this girl because you'll have black babies. That's the extent of colorism.
Now, I find it really hypocritical how Indians and South Asians will talk about prejudice they experience by white people and then turn around and take that same discriminatory energy and use it against black people. I know it happens. I grew up hearing it. So let's talk about how you are so eager to fit in that you would rather appease those who oppress you than support other oppressed groups. You know what that smells like? Desperation for acceptance. And the sad part is, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you work to blend in, you will still be seen as an other.
You find that for years, Africans in India have shared the stories being treated like criminals. Now, let's be clear, this isn't just about Africans in India. The reality is black people across the world have shared experiences of racism when interacting with some Indians. Whether it's in India, in African countries, the pattern isn't just tied to one place. It follows wherever these interactions happen.
What I want to talk about in this specific video is Indian people and anti-Black racism specifically. So whether this is within the country of India, or whether this is when Indian people immigrate to any part of the world, whether it be on the African continent, in North America, South America, wherever, Indian people have, and again, I'm not saying every single Indian person, but I'm talking about Indian people generally, our society, our culture, the belief systems that Indian people hold, etc. Indian people are extremely, extremely racist, especially towards Black people. And if you take a Black person who has been around Indian people for any period of time, Black people pick up on this. It's something that is, this is not a secret. Whether you're talking to, say African students who study in India, which there are African students who are there, or whether you're talking about, say, Kenyans. There's a large population of Kenya that are Indian people that have immigrated to that country, or South Africa, or Canada, or, the United States, whatever. But Black people pick up on Indian people's racism because it is quite apparent. It's something that that is there. It's obvious. So I'm just going to give you an example of me, my family, and the Indian people in South Africa. When I grew up there, I spent the first 12 years of my life under apartheid. So we had servants, maids, cooks, gardeners, etc. And all of these people were Africans. They were Black people. And all of the Indians in South Africa had servants. Okay, they were all Black. Now, how were these servants treated? They were treated as subhuman. They were not considered to be human beings with feelings. They drank out of different cups. So Indian people would not share their table with the servants, who were an integral part of their household. They took care of their children. They drove them everywhere. They cooked for them. But they had to eat off of separate dishes. They could not sit on the furniture. They, say, for example, when we left our home and we traveled, so we lived in Pietermaritzburg, we traveled to Durban on the weekends, holidays, whatever. Our maid would come with us. She was not allowed to sleep on or sit on our furniture or sleep on our furniture, so she had to sleep on the floor. These are things that all Indian people did in South Africa. And now I'm just talking about South Africa. I'm not talking about, say, when Indian people immigrate to other countries. But this is true even in first-generation Indians.
Now, let me give my take on this whole issue. I think it's time we have an open and honest conversation about how racism and anti-Blackness operates, not just in one place, but worldwide. Because this is not just about what happens in India or in African countries. It's about a mindset that follows certain people no matter where they go. And we've seen how Africans and other black people are treated in India. But the same mistreatment happens when some Indians move to other countries, especially in Africa. And it's not just about words or attitudes. It affects people's livelihood. Take employment, for example. You have Indian-owned businesses in African countries making millions, yet they pay their African employees way below what's fair. Some don't even pay their workers at all, and those who do often treat them very poorly. There are cases where workers are yelled at, overworked, and forced to tolerate disrespect just to keep their jobs. And if they are working in a home setting, it gets even worse. Take for instance, there are stories of domestic workers who aren't even allowed to use the same utensils as their employers. Imagine that. That's not just mistreatment, that's dehumanization. And let's talk about something else that's rarely discussed: marriage. You find that many Indians do not want black people marrying into their community. In fact, if an Indian person marries a black partner, they can be disowned by their own family. But when it comes to white people, it's a different story. And somehow, those marriages are more acceptable, which raises the question, why? Why is there so much strong resistance to black people but not to others? And yet, here's what's frustrating. Some of these same people who discriminate have also faced discriminations themselves. You'd think that experience would make them more compassionate, more understanding, but instead they turn around and do the same thing to others. And this shows how deeply ingrained this anti-blackness is in certain cultures. At the end of the day, racism is racism, no matter who it's coming from and where it's happening. And we can't keep ignoring it just because it's uncomfortable to talk about. Because if we don't address it, it'll keep happening and more people will continue to suffer in silence. So let's have this discussion in the comments below. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know what you think. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and consider subscribing for more discussions on real issues. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.